Awesome. All right. So as I was saying, what does technology project management look at Bloomberg LP? For the table of contents, or what I'll go through today, I'm going to talk about my background, my career path here at Bloomberg, the important skills I've acquired and I think are relevant to my job today, and that help me navigate some of the challenges that I see. And I go through with the different players and the content of the job itself. And then career insights, things that I've sort of picked up and found very valuable for myself, either to help me acquire those different skills or navigate those challenges in general. And then we'll go into the job and where my position sits in the organization within the different departments. I know that Bloomberg, we have a flat structure, so some of the hierarchy might look a little bit different. So if you do have any questions at the end, I'm happy to explain more about what each of those departments do. And then the stakeholders, so the individual people that I work with in each of those departments and what their functions are, and how in the projects that I work on and the projects I manage, they input or are responsible for different aspects of it. And then we'll talk about in my day-to-day through the skill sets, through the different people in the organization and those stakeholders, what it is I actually do, what kind of product I put forward. About me, my name's Avery Koep. My title is Information Security Project Manager. I am a New Jersey native. I grew up in a small town that was actually a field hockey powerhouse. So in my teens, I was all over the country competing at athletics in a very high level. And I ended up going to Franklin and Marshall College and playing field hockey there as well. I graduated with a degree in economics and philosophy. And I'm currently enrolled at Columbia University, finishing up actually this May, my Master's of Science in Enterprise Risk Management, or ERM. So when I first graduated, I had an economics degree from a liberal arts school, and I started to look at what job opportunities were open to me. And it was a little bit daunting because an economic degree, unlike something like maybe an accounting degree, it's very versatile and it can be applied to many different career paths. So for me, it was really about narrowing down specifically what it was that I wanted to do. And I had the opportunity to do an internship at a small brokerage firm, actually in New Jersey as well. And my goal when I went to that internship was, after the summer, I want to get that full-time job offer. So I was exploring, of the roles that were available in that firm, what would that job offer be? And so it became clear that there was either a sales and trading path or an analyst research path. And the sales and trading path were really the folks that were a little bit more boisterous, that were very client facing. And then there was the analyst or the research path, were the people that were studying for maybe their first or second level CFA exam and were, as far as I could discern at that time, more strategic thinkers. And so that was kind of what I wanted to strive for, to be somebody that had that book smart and was able to kind of navigate and tell, the asset managers which companies they should invest in and put in their portfolios and that kind of thing. So when I looked to do the full-time gig, I had the opportunity to start in the sales and trading path at that brokerage firm, and decided that I was looking for something a little bit more intellectually challenging, and narrowed my search to focus in roles in New York City with the analyst in the title, so economics to analyst. And I ended up finding the Bloomberg role through a generic recruiting agency under the title business analyst. So it was a little bit of a humbling experience, if I'm being honest, to go to, from this institution, this academic institution, to be a temp in such a large company. I was, went from, I think there was 2,300 people at my undergraduate institution to now as a temp in a company that was 19,000 people at the time. So it was a temp to perm position. And they told me that, if I kind of proved myself, then I would have the opportunity to come on full time. So So that's what I did. I came in as the business analyst, and it was actually in the data department. So Bloomberg is a software company, and we deliver a lot of what our product does is we deliver pricing information to our clients. So I, as a business analyst, was working with the different contribution mechanisms and allowing the pricing to actually show up on the terminal. So you have smaller shops that maybe have a couple of different offerings, and they want to allow people to see their bond pricings and whatnot. And so I was troubleshooting with them the delivery of that data to their terminal screens. And then after 2 months, it was communicated to me that there wasn't a headcount available in that specific department, but that my boss, through my work ethic and the things that I had shown him at the time that I was capable of doing, that he would support me to apply to any other entry level position in the firm. So at Bloomberg, we have what's called the Sales and Analytics program, and then we also have GTech, or Global Customer Support, in the technology space. So for me, the sales and analytics training program was what I ended up going into and got the job there. And then from there, it's really pretty intense. You are in class from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. You're learning the ins and outs of the terminal and how it is actually used for our clients on the street or in banks or, doing research, whatever type of firm they might be at. And then you're actually, once you go through this, I think it's a 3-month or maybe a 4-month training program, then you actually get on the desk, they call it, and you're supporting clients and training them on how to use new functionality or a different product maybe that they weren't aware of, and really getting the full use of their terminal subscription. And then that role feeds into, usually you become an advanced trainer, so teaching other people about the terminal and that 4-month training program, or it's actually a feeder to the sales program, so you're delivering content to, or you're actually selling the terminal to clients and visiting them on site. And for me at that time, I didn't feel as though either one of those positions really called to me fully. So I had asked my manager, at the end of the year, do I need to go to one of these 2 roles, or is there a possibility? Is there anything else open to me that I could possibly move into outside of kind of this very well-defined training path? And I ended up applying and then getting hired into the risk management group in the identity and access management as a project manager, junior project manager. I think I had 5 or 6 different interviews, but one of the people that I interviewed with was actually the wife of my first boss in data. And so there must have been maybe 40 other people from the training program that also applied for that role. And because I had that reputation from my first boss in the data field, I was able to utilize that relationship with her to understand what is it that this job really entails, what are they looking for, and in that way I think it gave me sort of that leg up in navigating that interview process that maybe the other applicants didn't have. So after a couple years in the identity and access risk management group, I enrolled in my master's program. I had a couple of questions about, how do other people do this type of risk management in the industry? Operational risk really in the past couple of years has grown as a domain. And I was looking outside to understand I exhausted the internal training around this topic and was looking outside the firm to see what else the industry really offered. And I ended up enrolling at Columbia for what I thought was actually a certificate program. And then I ended up getting accepted to the master's program. So it was kind of an interesting happenstance. So I ended up enrolling part-time in the enterprise risk management program. I've gone part-time for 3 years now, and I'll be graduating in May. And before I made that decision of, do I want to spend 3 years of my life at night going to school, I was curious, would this specialize in spending the time and money for a master's degree mean that I needed to stay in the risk department, or would there be other opportunities? Where else could I use this degree in the long run? And so I did sort of a crowdsourcing of this question. And one of the women that I worked with at the time had said, oh no, there's risk management in a lot of different businesses, and it's not just the risk department, but certain business lines do have risk functions that they're matched up with. So you could definitely move into other areas, one of them being the Chief Technology Office. They work on specifically technology risk and how you architect the integration of different systems or new technologies into our current technology portfolio, to make sure that we are maintaining our security posture or increasing it upon the adoption of these new technologies. And so for me, that was kind of where I would want to go once I had finished my master's program. And I think I applied to the master's program. I got accepted in July. And then I found out through a contact that I had via just part of my day-to-day work in the risk department that they were creating a new team. They needed project managers to sit in between 3 or 4 different departments to work on these larger infrastructure projects, one of them being the Chief Technology Office, who owns what we have this the information security plan here at Bloomberg. And so for me, that was kind of exactly where I wanted to be once I graduated, and the master's program had opened that door, I think, earlier than it would have if I hadn't enrolled. So that was really exciting for me. I ended up taking that job 2 years ago now. So I've been working in this role since then. And so through kind of that transition, there's a number of different things, right? If you're working full time and you're doing a master's program part-time, the key thing that I would say, which I think I developed through the sports and school my whole life, would be the time management. So it's not, how much do you have to do, but it's when you have that downtime, what can you do preemptively or before it's due, or before, that you have that conversation where you have to go through the project charter or what have you, to really make use of the times when you don't have deadlines. And then soft skills, empathy. So I work with so many different types of people in different areas of the organization. And a lot of times if they don't know you and you're coming in with a security project that might not be in their same their traditional kind of business deliverables, how can you get on the same page with them to say this is important? I understand, what you do is important, and how do we kind of facilitate that relationship to get these things done? And then situationally, it's really about how do you present yourself or present the project that you're working on in a way that really resonates with the people that you're working with, or the situation that you're in at that time. And soft skills, I think assertiveness. So once I moved from the entry-level training program to the risk department, there were a lot of my peers from the training program that said, how did you make that move? That's so unusual. Tell me how you did that. I would love to learn more about, that move in your career. And really it came down to, I was presented with 2 options, right? The sales role or the advanced training role, and neither one of them really was what I wanted to do long term. And I spoke up and I asked that question, and then I found out that there were other options. But if I hadn't been willing to ask that question, if I hadn't been assertive in that way, then I don't think that I would have been able to figure out that these are the other options that are open to me. So I think that is something to keep in mind. And so for people skills, negotiation, that's always a good one to have. I think it's an art, not a science. So it's something that as you go through your career and you exercise negotiating these things, as you move from, one role to another, one project to another, you can get more comfortable with it. and meeting facilitation. So with any project manager, you have a number of different meetings. You have a lot of times, at least for me, it's the project launch is the big meeting, and it's getting everybody on board to understand, what's the acceptance criteria, what is it that we're trying to do, and where do all of the different stakeholders fit in, as far as inputting their preferences for how something might be architected or who should own which piece, of that project, depending on what their different areas they're responsible for. And team building, in order to really get anything done, I think you have to work with people. And so it's understanding how do you kind of get people to be motivated and work together. And I put friendlies on here. So that's a big one for me. When I moved from any one of these 4 departments that I have been in, I had to, kind of make new friends, establish myself as somebody that people like to work with and somebody that's competent in what they do. And it really does pay for itself, I think, when you put in that time and effort to get to know people, to understand, where they're coming from. And then just as in the story I told about interviewing for the risk management role and how I had become familiar with my old boss's wife, who also worked with the company, just through social interaction. She was then, willing to kind of support my application through that process. And then communication skills, oral and written. If you're a project manager, a lot of times there'll be meetings, things will be discussed. In the security realm, there might be, events or things that come up that we're presented with. Somebody's requesting for a new technology or something like that. And there are a lot of different opinions because with security, there's more than one way to do something. So you do need to have that skill set where you can collapse down a idea or a project proposal into something that's written, and then also be able to explain it to the different stakeholders that you have, that you work with, depending on what their familiarity might be with a specific domain, and understand the audience, right? So we talked about the meeting facilitation and when you're doing the project launch, but at any time to understand where you're coming from, and that's kind of where, when we started even this conversation today, I wanted to understand what's the background of the people that I'm talking to and kind of what they are looking to get out of the situation. So I think that's really important. Business skills, organization. As a project manager, you always have to be, you're the person people go to and say, oh, did you have, either this ticket internally, this JIRA for those teams that we work with to do agile, or remember meeting notes from this conversation, can you pull it up? And so for me, it's writing everything down, being able to retreat at a moment's notice is really that value add that I think makes a difference. Critical thinking in a lot of roles, it's not just what is presented to you, but how do you solve a problem in a more inventive way? So that's very important. One of the first things that I learned is managing expectations. So a lot of times we are the type of people that want to do everything. We want to give our best to everyone. And sometimes if you have competing deadlines, you need to really have the conversation either with the stakeholder or with your management to say, which is a higher priority, is I want to make sure you understand if you need this by, say it's Friday, you need it by Tuesday, or can wait till next Friday. That'll make a big difference for me in my time management and determining what has to go first. So conflict resolution, competing priorities. A lot of times there's everybody's project is the most important project, and how you have that conversation between the different stakeholders, product owners, to ensure that what needs to get done gets done. And then air cover. Interestingly enough, because I work with so many individual contributors, a lot of times very technical in the developer space, being the person that can speak for them in a meeting or be the one that can express their ideas or their concerns with maybe more assertive personalities. I think that goes a long way in kind of getting those maybe more introverted people to really feel that they can depend on you, which makes a big difference. And then because of my trajectory and what I did formally in my my undergrad years and now in my graduate years, the technical aptitude is something that you kind of have to grow and learn in, and figuring out when to ask the appropriate questions. If you have people that are maybe more technically trained or in the weeds a little bit more with specific technology, being able to ask them, okay, you know, this is the 7th time I've heard this acronym. Can you explain to me a little bit more about, you know, where that acronym came from, or, you know, how that fits in and what the history is here at the company? We have a lot of proprietary technology at Bloomberg, so it's not always, can I do a Google search, or, you know, can I do, you know, control find to see if there's any Jira tickets or team pages that really go into more depth on this. But asking the appropriate questions, and then after a meeting, if you don't understand something, going to somebody and saying, hey, would you mind, you know, spending 15, 20 minutes with me to just overview kind of how this works. So that type of curiosity, the problem solving, and being able to learn those new technical concepts, because of where I sit in the organization and the type of projects that I do work on, I can go to the next slide on this, is that there are a lot of, it's not my job to dive very deeply into one specific technology, but when I do have a project, I do dive in and try to learn, if we're onboarding a new technology, you know, how do other people in the space really think about this? So I do a little bit of a kind of my own research, and then I take that into those conversations before. So it's definitely not bad to ask a lot of questions. The thing is, you want to ask intelligent questions. So making sure you do that groundwork before you have those conversations, really, I think, goes a long way in people being willing to kind of spend their time and share with you. Career insights, your first role most likely won't be your last. So it's okay to take a job to explore and identify what it is that you like and don't like about the role, and then decide, okay, moving forward, this is what I want to kind of delve more into in my next role. And then see if, you know, while you're learning these new things, maybe I want to learn more about technology, or I want to learn more about how do I set technology strategy, you know, talking to your management and seeing, even if I stay in this role without kind of moving somewhere else, what other projects can I take on where I could either grow that skill set or perform that function. And then, as we talked about earlier, it's the relationships too, learning from others, networking, finding a mentor. Over the past couple of years, I've had many mentors, and you'll find, or at least I found, that depending on where I am, I might be able to get something through that relationship that serves me for a specific amount of time, and that mentor is able to give maybe at that time. But then, as you know, you grow in your career, they grow in the career, your interests might shift. You might find somebody else that you can lean on, and it's okay to have, you know, more than one person that you go to kind of bounce ideas off and ask for help. And then it's also okay to, you know, move away from, you know, meeting with someone on such a large, high frequency, depending on what it is that you need. I found, and I've mentioned this a couple times, word of mouth is really important. It'll tell you about new opportunities. People will share their experiences, maybe working in a specific department or with a specific manager, and give you insights or recommendations. So that's really important. In the project management office, we work with the Chief Technology Office at Bloomberg, the engineering group, which is really the lifeblood of our organization. I believe we have something like 6,000 engineers here at Bloomberg, because we build a lot of our own tools in-house. Information systems, and then facility operations as well. For the Information Security Project Management Office, our business reports directly into the management committee on the progress of the information security business plan. So that's something that allows us to have quite a bit of visibility, and there is a lot of eyes, you know, on the projects that I work on, which is very cool for me. And so then the stakeholders, so within those different departments that I just mentioned, we have security architects. So they consult about the internal technologies, and they work with the product owners on the specifics of the implementation. We have product owners, we have technical leads. So these are the people that maybe run the teams or work very closely with the day-to-day development. Project managers like myself, we build out the work plan, facilitate the discussions, and do relationship management. And then depending on the project, there might be additional stakeholders that would weigh in or do a portion of the technical solution. So then day to day, we are an agile organization. So I work with a couple of different development teams, and we have sprint planning, stand-ups, and we do Scrum and retrospective as well. I report on the team's progress, depending on which component of a project they are finished with, in progress, or completed. We have prioritization conversations. So that a lot of times is up to me to set up those meetings if I see kind of at an arm's length that there is conflicting priorities coming in. And then documentation, project plan writing, and blocker documentation. As terms of specific projects, because of the sensitive nature of information security and a lot of the projects that I work on, for those of you that aren't in security, it's just easier to speak about this in generic terms. So I've chose castle terminology. So if you look at this photo, and I think a lot of people are aware of castles, there's the city around the town. So it's not walled up. This is something like our external facing network, or the landing page of Bloomberg.com. Anyone with an internet connection can reach that. And then as you get closer into the company network, there's monitor connections between the inside or the outside, right? So more people can interact with the less sensitive data. But as an employee, right, I might have access to sensitive data as far as our information security goes, and then I would need to log in with a username, password, and dual authentication, that type of thing. So there's also, right, in the castle, there's a drawbridge, and you see if somebody's approaching, and you can decide whether you wanted to lower or pull up that drawbridge. So in the same way, the technology that we implement a lot of times allows us to facilitate that connection and that path there. And so for Bloomberg, it's a similar thing. The crown jewels is our data and what we're looking to protect in the information security plan. And then I will open the floor up for questions. And then, as always, if you feel you want to ask the question in an open forum, you'd like to email me later, I'm happy to have a conversation, offline on the phone to discuss any questions you might have or insights I can, hopefully help build out a little bit more of what I do here at Bloomberg.
Avery, one thing I do want to know is along this way and along this path, when it comes to professional development, personal performance, is this something that you are leading yourself, or is your PR going to be done by like your manager or something like that?
So in Bloomberg internally, they really encourage internal transferring. So for me and for my personal development, my boss has been very supportive about encouraging me to do, develop skill sets of what I would like to do. I tend to seek out these things myself. So I'll say, I found this conference, I think it's really interesting, can I go? And they will then review kind of the content of the conference and approve it. And they've been really encouraging in allowing me to kind of develop skill sets and that sort of thing, or take this training that will increase my technology awareness. But as far as the end of year review in my development, my manager does kind of weigh in and say, this is where you've gone this year, and this is where we'd like it better. So I think it's a little bit of both.
Thank you. Okay, Tanny asks, as a project manager, do you normalize for how different stakeholders represent their progress? If so, how do you go about it?
So it really depends on who we're talking to. So internally we have Jira is what we use to do our agile project management. So I do have a Jira board per Scrum team that I work with, and we make sure we document everything on there. And then we also have a summary board for the information security plan specifically. And so all of my projects then I also summarize on the information security JIRA board. And then from that information and those milestones, we then create a report that is then given to or presented to the management committee as well. So it depends on who's asking and what type of information they want, right? So if you have somebody that's really kind of the C-suite level, you're not going to be giving them very specific milestones. They're going to be interested in really more high-level milestones. So it's kind of up to the project manager and how you deliver those pieces of information depending on who the audience is. And that's part of kind of the documentation and the idea of representation, depending on who it is. That answers your question.
All right, thank you.